Ladies and gentlemen, Major General Beast Feast.
So I became a pilot and I had a lot of fun. So that's what the rest of the video was going to show. Before I start, listening to General Horner is always enlightening, and I always learn something new. I want to comment on one thing he said when he talked about his Franken flight suit, and he had one flight suit, and it was torn, and he had to sew it up. And things did get better. In 1988, when I was at Tonopah, I had 4 flight suits at Tonopah, 4 at Nellis, and on Friday nights at the club, if we got too much beer spilt on them, we just gave it back and said, give me a new one. So things do get better, and they will get better for you all. Okay?
Hi, General Feast. Again, thank you for being out here. Our time today is limited this morning, so I just want to get straight to the point and straight to the reason that everyone is here today, and is to listen to your war story. So can you detail your experiences on that, from takeoff to landing on that infamous 17 January 1991 night? So there you were.
Okay, so it's a 7-hour story, but I'll shorten it. So Desert Shield was great for us because we got to practice. And we got to practice everything we were going to do on the first night up to crossing into Iraq. So we would, once a week or once every 10 days, we would fly missions the same way we would if we were going to actually fly into Iraq. We would do everything communications out. We would take off as 2 ships, never talk on the radios, join on a tanker without using communication. Once we got on a tanker, we could talk on interphone to the boom operators and get updates from the pilots on the tankers. They would lead us up to the northern part of Saudi Arabia, and we would fly along the border, stay on their wing, and then fly back home. So that we were desensitizing the Iraqis into us flying along the border. So they would see tankers up there, they would see fighters up there, so that when Desert Storm kicked off, we did the exact same thing. However, then we stealthed up and departed the tankers and flew into Iraq for our missions. So having practiced that several times during Desert Shield was very helpful to all of us. The way we stealthed up the aircraft back then was we threw a couple switches. There were no beacons on the airplane. Everything was flat so that our radar cross-section was low. We throw a switch and the antennas would come in so we could no longer hear anybody or talk to anybody. So from then on, we were communications out. We would drop off the tanker and then fly into our target areas. So the first night, I was the first aircraft to go into, I wasn't the first aircraft to go into Iraq, let me say that. Task Force Normandy had gone in before myself, and the Apaches had taken out some radar vans right over the Iraqi border. So they actually shot the first shots of Desert Storm. What I did was drop the first bomb. So I dropped the first bomb 9 minutes before H-hour, which was 0200, and I flew in and hit an intercept operations center. So the missions of the F-117, the first 12 aircraft, well actually both waves, but the first wave was 12 aircraft, was to take out their IADs, their integrated air defenses, so that the non-stealthy aircraft could come in behind us and not be intercepted or shot at till end game. So my target first one was an intercept operation center, and it was in an underground bunker. So I went into Iraq. Everything was great. Nobody knew I was there as far as I could tell. I realized we had to trust the engineers that built the F-117 and told us that our radar cross-section was low and that it would work. So I went into the first target area and everything was going great. I concentrated on finding the target. It wasn't very easy, but because of our techniques of looking at offsets, I was able to find the bunker. I watched the bomb guide into the bunker and then saw the doors and the vents blow out, so I knew I had hit it. So I was feeling pretty good about myself. I had to do a 180-degree turn to go to my next target, which was H2H3, which was out on the western side of Iraq. And that was the sites where they had the Scuds that we were worried they were going to shoot Scuds into Israel. So my next target was out there. As I did that 180-degree turn, I figured, well, I had a wingman 1 minute behind me. I'm going to look back and watch his bomb hit, since I had nothing else to do at the time. So I looked back, and I saw red lines coming up at me. And I thought, what did I hit? It's like something's exploding down there. It's causing these fireworks kind of stuff. And then I realized it was AAA. So it was the first time I'd ever seen AAA. General Horner talked about red flags. Red flags are great. Red flags, you go there and they say, okay, jank for AAA, and you'd get, you'd react because somebody told you there was AAA, but you never actually saw anything. The SAMs, they called them smoky SAMs, little, things you have on the 4th of July that go up in the air and smoke comes out of them, and yeah, okay, that's a SAM, but I'm not worried about it. I'm at red flag. Well, this was real, and I realized they were shooting at me, so I no longer cared about my wingman's bomb. I just pushed the throttles of the 117 up as far as they would go into mill power so that I could go 0.9 Mach, which was not very fast, but I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could, and I did. So now, because the first bomb had hit, the Iraqis were all awake, and the skies were lighting up all over Iraq, and I looked out my right side, and I could see Baghdad, and the sky was lit up, and it's the videos you've seen, on CNN back then, and it's what we always said looked like, the Disneyland fireworks going off. I could actually see SAMs, but being launched, but none of them were steady on my canopy, and as long as there's line of sight, it's not aimed at you. It's when it's coming at you and it's not moving, there's no line of sight when you have to get worried. So nothing that I could see was being shot at me. And I thought, well, I'm glad I'm not going there. I'm just going out here to the west where they won't know that I'm there. But I looked in front of me, and it was 100-something miles in front of me, and it, again, looked like the same as Baghdad, only a smaller area, because Baghdad's a big city. And the problem was that smaller area, my target was right in the center of that, so it wasn't like I could not go there. And my target there was a sector operations center, not in an underground bunker, but in a big building, and so that was my target. Well, I guess we'll talk later, but the 117 software at the time, we had the GBU-27 bunker buster bombs that only we carried, 2,000-pound bombs, very accurate. They rarely, if ever, failed, and where we aimed them, they went. The problem was the software was such that we had to be below 10,000 feet to deliver that weapon, and being below 10,000 feet puts you in the heart of the AAA. So even after the first week, when General Horder decreed the only ones going to downtown Baghdad would be F-117s, we weren't too happy about that because we had to be below 10,000 feet flying through that heart of the AAA. In any case, I went out to the west. Again, I hit that target and made it through, and I was shocked. After delivering that bomb, I turned south and headed back to the Saudi border. And I had a knee board with all 12 call signs of the 12 aircraft in the first wave on my knee. The plan was once I got to a certain point, I would put my antennas back out and check in with my wingman, who again I said was 1 minute behind me on this whole route. I was thinking to myself, I made it through there, I hope he did, but I wasn't sure. And I checked in with him, and he answered, and we rejoined, and then we went on to the tanker to get gas so we can make it back to our base in Saudi Arabia. So I was happy that we were both survived. We made it through. And now I'm wondering about the other 10 aircraft. And slowly I listened to them check in with the tanker, and I checked off each time I heard a call sign, and in about 30 minutes I had checks next to every name. So that was a good thing. I knew we all made it out. And now the concern was, well, who got hit? Who had damage? and we flew it took another 2 hours to get home. The base we were at was 1,000 miles from Baghdad, so these were long sorties. When we got home, there were a lot of aircraft that had diverted into our base that had damage, F-111s, EF-111s, others. But the 12 of us, we had nothing wrong with any of our aircraft and nobody had got hit. So we were starting to believe in stealth technology.
Yeah. Well, as that strike package commander for the F-117s, how did you manage those 11 other aircraft, including yourself, in the event of a reattack or anything like that within the thick of the enemy fire? How was that managed?
Okay, so first off, we relied on all the pilots to do their jobs. The mission planners would plan a mission based on the threat. We were given a black line through a complex computer system, at least back then it was, now it's probably on your iPhone, but we would fly this black line and our job was to stay on that black line because if we left it, we might get into a threat area that we didn't want to be. F-117s are low observable, not invisible. They can be seen by early warning radars, so we would do tactics so that if we were seen, we didn't know if we were or if we weren't. We would descend, we would turn, we would climb so that they would lose the contact because we did not want the early warning radars to hand off our location to the target tracking radars that could shoot at us. And they were, target tracking radars for stealth are like looking through a soda straw. They're not going to be able to find us unless they get some time of handoff from an early warning radar. So these missions were all planned, single ship, even simultaneous attack missions. Sometimes we had 8 aircraft go against one target. For example, the nuclear research facility in Baghdad, outside of Baghdad. We had 8 aircraft go after that at one time. We would deconflict by altitude and headings because we wanted to make sure that the aircraft at the higher elevation or altitudes did not drop a bomb through the flight path of another aircraft. So the key was to be on your black line and to be on time. And I'll add something here. So the Iraqis never knew we were there until the first bomb hit. So on a simultaneous attack, you wanted to be exactly on time. And every 117 pilot could hit a TOT within 2 seconds easily, if not right on time. So if you were early and you were doing a simultaneous attack, when your bomb hit, the skies would light up and all the aircraft that were on time behind you had to fly through that AAA to get to the target, which did not make pilots happy. If you were late, the sky was already lit up when you got there, so you didn't want to be late. So you always wanted to be on time, and you heard about it when we landed if you were early. But the bottom line here is mission planning was easy because we all just went and flew by ourselves, okay, and without talking to anybody. General Horner talked about the F-15s wanting to shoot, MiGs. We had to be careful that they didn't shoot us. So we were given certain times that we were block times to fly our missions and certain altitudes, and so that our friendly air knew where we were, not where we were, but what altitudes we were going to be at, and they were not allowed to shoot anybody in that block of altitude, usually about 5,000 feet. So from 15 to 20,000 feet going in and out, they wouldn't engage during a 1-hour period, and that's how we deconflicted.
Okay. Outside of that black line routing that you talked about that you mission planned single ship, how else did you guys mitigate risk? So in other words, how was a bandit pilot to react if he was to see an SA-6 guiding on him while on that black line routing, or he was to see a wall of barrage fire, artillery fire in front of him? Did you guys have procedures? Did you guys experience that?
Yes, we experienced this. Our procedures were stop looking outside because the missions were planned with the radar cross-section that we had. And each aircraft had a slightly different radar cross-section. We kind of knew what they were. Each black line I talked about, because we had to go into a threat environment, not always could we not be targeted. So we would call it red time. During that red time, and it might be up to a minute, we knew we could be seen and tracked and targeted. And so we wanted to minimize the red time. if we reacted to anything we saw and came off the black line, we could have made it worse for ourselves. So we did not do that. And if you bank the aircraft, your radar cross-section changes. So if a SAM is launched at you and you bank the aircraft, you're probably highlighting yourself more because the plane is built to fly straight and level and then, avoid threats by turning mostly. So we didn't react. We didn't have any early warning radar or EW systems on board. We didn't know. We didn't get an early notice that something was launched at us. We just saw it outside. So, like I said, if you started to get worried, you just quit looking outside. Now, a lot of times we're in the weather, and because the weather gets bad over there, especially the months we were flying. And the problem with weather and at night is everything looks like it's being shot at you. You can see a fire on the ground and convince yourself it was a SAM or a AAA being shot at you, and it's just sitting there on the ground. And in the weather, as the tracers fly over your canopy, it's just like lightning's going off the whole time. So if I had eye patches, I would have put them on, but we just tried to ignore that and fly our missions and hit our targets.
Okay. So the skies over Baghdad presented your jet its first true taste of enemy fire. How did you mentally prepare yourself to fly in this well-defended slice of airspace, and how confident before that first sortie were you in the stealth technology, the low absorber technology?
So pilots, all of us, our mission is to fly, fight, win. We train for years and years and years and hear stories about Vietnam. Little minor things happen like just cause, but everybody trains to go to combat, and that's kind of what General Horner said. That was, his best times was in combat. So we trained, and we were ready, and that's all you can do. As far as the stealth technology, the engineers told us it would work. We would get briefings on it. We knew the radar cross-section was low. We knew that we had actually done a red flag type sortie before Desert, because we had come out of the black program, and we knew fighters that rolled up behind us couldn't see us, even though they knew we were there and they couldn't track us. So we were feeling good about those things. So night one, I was feeling pretty good. All the pilots were feeling pretty good. Everybody wanted to be in the first wave or the second wave, and if you weren't, you were upset. After flying the first night, I did not want to fly night number 2. I thought we had 12 in the first wave, 12 in the second wave. All 24 aircraft came back, no damage at all. We're still thinking that we're pretty lucky because all the AAA we saw, it could be a lucky shot. The Golden BB that you've heard about would hit us and could take us out. So night 2, I mission planned. Night 3, I flew. So I flew every other day. And after about a week, when nobody was getting hit, we figured out this stuff works pretty good, and we trusted it. I mean, again, the engineers were correct. So I thank them all the time when I see them.
Amazing. Can you share a little bit about the mission planning that led up to that first night's sortie?
So again, most of that was practicing taking off, calm out, rejoining on tanker, calm out, and no lights, no beacons. And realize we didn't have a radar. So everything was based on meeting at a certain point on time. Now we did have air-to-air TACANs, so in good guy land, we could turn those on and see the distance we were from the tankers and realize that we're getting closer and this should work out. During those missions, we liked it when the moon was out. In combat, we did not, but the moon made it brighter and you could see the tanker. So we practiced all these kinds of procedures. Desert Shield lasted for several months, so obviously we had to train more pilots as they came over after getting checked out at Tonopah. And we practiced all those things. And then, like I said, we practiced the missions up along the border. Mm-hmm. And then we practiced hitting simulated targets that were going to be like the targets we would experience in Iraq. A lot of sand over there, not many trees, not much humidity, so we just practiced so that when we went into combat, it'd be easier for us.
So all this training, all this mission prep in Desert Shield, how did that prepare you to understand the overall air strategy of Desert Storm and where the F-117 was going to fit into this strategy?
So working for General Horner was General Glosson, who was at the Black Hole up in Riyadh, and General Deptula, which most of you, if not all of you, should know. Mm-hmm. He might be called an air power zealot. He's a great guy. He was lieutenant colonel, so he had the ATO. His task was to put the ATO together. We called him the keeper of the Holy Plan because that was the first 3 nights of the war. And we, myself and a few others, were part of the mission planning cell during Desert Shield. We would go up to the Black Hole and talk to them, the planners, for the overall strategy for the air campaign, and they would give us our targets so that we had the first 3 nights planned before Desert Storm started. We knew what our targets were going to be. Okay. We also knew how we fit in, and again, primarily our first couple nights were to take out radar sites and communication sites, the AT&T building in Baghdad, that's the one that was on the cover of Newsweek magazine, so that they could not communicate and, their air threat would be 0.
Okay. Got to ask this question. So you learned after that first sortie that your wife, who was also deployed with you to Saudi Arabia, was witness to a very interesting and sobering meeting. It's a meeting that really discussed the odds of your all's survival and coming back as far as the JIT. Can you describe this meeting from your perspective?
Well, she can describe it, but she told me about it. So when we took off, the wing commander called in all the senior leaders, and my wife Bridget was the acting LG there. So, and he said that the president and Secretary of Defense Cheney would not be surprised if we lost half of our aircraft. And so he told them all to prepare for that. Wow. It didn't happen. We're all back, and it was great every night to land and have her there, so we could have a dinner together. Awesome. Or breakfast.
So you've kind of already hinted at it, but Desert Storm was not the 117's world debut combat event. The U.S. invasion